Hi, I'm Joe from Reds. A lot of you know me from our fly fishing channel. We also have a hunting channel here, and today we have a very genuine review of the Crispi Altitude GTX boot. Now, I've seen some other reviews, and they're always reviewing and talking about the brand new boot, which tells the consumer almost nothing. I have an entire season on this set here, and I'm going to go through what I love about the boot and a couple of things just to know if you're potentially buying the boot. But first off, Crispi Altitude GTX is 1.45 pounds per boot, in the size 10. So it's really kind of a go light, go fast boot. It's a synthetic hybrid boot, 8 inches tall, and it is partial leather. I just call it a hybrid, partial leather, partial synthetic boot. Features a Vibram sole and genuine Gore-Tex, so it is ultra light, ultra breathable, but also waterproof. Now, I want to tell you where I'm coming at from this review. We sell Crispi boots. We fit and ship Crispi boots from Reds every single day. And we also have a buy with confidence guarantee that you can see on our website if you click through to the product below. If you purchase a Crispi boot from Reds and it just doesn't fit right, returns are easy. We're a super great company to shop online with if you don't get a chance to come in here and try them on in person. But where I'm coming at from this review, I'm going to grab a couple of other pairs of boots that I've worn in the past that are essentially from the same family. I've gone through 2 sets of the Thor 2, which is also primarily a synthetic boot, really breathable. Those are a fabulous early season bivy style elk hunting boot with a real stiff flex rating. And these are a set of Summits that I've gone through as well. Now, these boots have been fine. I've not been blown away by either pair of those boots. I liked them. They held up fine. Some people love them. If you're a big fan of those, go ahead and buy them again. As soon as I switched to the Altitude, I really liked it a lot better for a couple of different reasons. This is an early season boot for me. I will wear it all the way into October, assuming conditions are relatively dry. And part of the reason this works for me is I'm putting on extremely high mileage in often warm, dry conditions here on the east slopes of the Cascade Mountains. But the tongue is highly breathable. There's a lot of exposure. It does have a leather side, which gives you a lot of torsional stability, but the breathable tongue really helps radiate sweat and perspiration out of my boots. My feet are as at risk of getting wet from sweat in that early season as they are actual moisture. And so that's part of why I chose the Altitude GTX. The other portion, or the other reason that I really like it, is the genuine Vibram sole. Now, when we take other boots, and I could grab one of the other ones from down there, but I'm just gonna grab the Laponia 2, for instance, off the shelf here. And that's probably the most direct competitor to the Altitude that we sell. Some people love the legendary Laponia 2. The Altitude's a little bit newer. But to me, this sole, the boots I've had with the non-Vibram have been a little softer and maybe a little sneakier, but they just don't grip on that real extreme side hilling that I really like. The Vibram rubber just seems to grab, hold, stick, and grip a little bit better than whatever composite they're using in some of these other boots. At least that's been my experience. So I really like the stability for side hilling in the Altitude. Now, let's move on to kind of some of the details about the boot. So I put an extreme season on this. I've been through bear season, archery deer, and archery elk hunting, shed hunting, scouting, everything in this boot. I don't know how many hundreds of miles I have on this boot, but I've been extremely happy with it. It's one of the few boots that I really don't care whether I take it off when I get done with my trip. One thing that I learned about this boot early on, though, is there's going to be a lot of shrink and stretch in this leather along the sides. And you want to keep this thing greased up. The only problem I've had with the boot, and I'm already very satisfied with the boot. For what it costs, I think it's held up amazingly well and performed really good. I am losing a little bit of stitching right there where I get this bend in the boot. And I think part of it's because I didn't properly treat it and keep that leather supple. So that's one lesson I will say is don't ignore, just because it's a synthetic boot or primarily synthetic, don't ignore treating that leather on the sides. I think keeping that soft and supple is going to help immensely in the wear pattern. The other thing that I found is, and I'm just going to use the new boot for an example on this, is what I found with these laces grip so good and tight that what would happen is I would get the boot kind of sweaty from the inside, and then it would dry. And as it dried, it would really shrink up like so. And when it would do that, I would put my foot back in it, and the boot would be a little overly tight, although my foot slid in, and I would start to get a little bit of hot spot and rub on the tops of my smaller toes on the side. And it took me a while to figure out that it wasn't the boot itself, it was that these laces lock in so nice and tight that there wasn't any give. And so what I end up doing is I end up loosening up these laces like so. Anytime that I go from kind of just through a wet and dry phase, whether that's precipitation or perspiration, it's really important to lace that and start fresh. And don't be afraid to run these bottom laces loose and then crank it down right in here. And I'll even show you a lacing technique here in just a minute that I use for that and I really like for it. So that's one consideration. Keep it greased, keep that leather supple. I think I would have eliminated the issue with the small amount of unstitching that took place right there had I done that. What's amazing is the boots still don't have any leaks. Before I did this review, I actually took newspaper, this was just a couple of days ago, and put it inside the boot and ran the hose over it. And there's been very few boots, whether they're Gore-Tex or not, that don't leak on me after a season. And these Altitudes are holding up great. And I think that's probably because the Gore-Tex material itself isn't the same stuff that it was 10 years ago. They're continuing to innovate. Now, as far as cons go, I am having a little bit of the kind of the rand in the front come and delaminate, but for the amount of mileage and use that I put on these boots, to me that's tolerable. I can clean that out and shoe glue it if I need to. The comfort and wear of these boots has been so good that I'm completely satisfied. I would buy the same boots again tomorrow, far before I got the Thors or the Summits, at least for me. Now, it does have a pretty snug fitting toe box, as you can see there. So it's not a real wide boot. It does fit really tight over your toes. I exclusively wore the San Juan sock. That's their lighter version of the sock at Crispi. They've worn amazing. They've held up great. You know, I'll make a shameless plug for the Crispi socks. With the exception of Darn Toughs, it's probably the best sock or toughest sock that I've ever worn right there. Now, a couple of the cons. The cons would be just simply, you know, a little bit of delamination on the toe. I'm not super concerned about that. I expect that after a season of use. These go from my #1 early season hunting boot to kind of a work boot after a season anyways. The other thing about Crispi boots in general is the insoles. I pretty much anymore, I take, let me pop an insole out of one of these boots. Yeah, I'll just pop it out of this one. I pretty much take the Crispi insoles. They're a felt insole. They're air mesh, blah, 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 something or other. You can read Crispi's propaganda about them, but to me, these are basically throwaways. I've worn some of my boots with them and they're fine. If you're gonna be in steep terrain, lots of side hilling, rough country, unstable footing, I can't recommend enough getting some type of super feet. Now, I've thrown the Trailblazer Comfort in this right here, but what we like to do is whether you're in store or not, or if you haven't used super feet before, just open your wallet and get a set of the blue super feet. If you don't have a pair already in your other shoes, consider getting a set of the blue super feet and putting that in there. I think for what you spend on these boots, it's worth spending a few extra bucks and getting into the blue super feet. All right, so let's talk sizing on this boot. So I went down a half a European size down to a 44 in these boots. So I'm gonna set this right on the ball of my foot right here, all the way back, and in the men's, I'm gonna stand up and I'm gonna write it a dead 11, okay? So I have worn, so let me grab my old Thors. I have worn a 44.5 in the Thors. I've worn a 44.5 in the Thors, and because these are going to be a thin sock boot and an early season boot for me, I was actually able to downsize I wear a men's US 11 in everything, but I was actually able to get down to a 44 so long as I'm just wearing a thin sock, and it's been great. That makes your boot a little bit lighter, a little bit tighter, as long as you're not going to buck up. your sock density or your sock thickness. I think that the consider a half size down in the European model if you're uncertain. To me, that's been an absolutely excellent fit. I don't want my boots clunky. I want to buy them as small as makes sense. And I've had no toe bump of my toe hitting the front of the boot whatsoever. I think the last thing we'll talk about here real quick is just the lace up. Yeah, let's just talk about the lacing here. So go ahead and bring the camera back down here, Larry. And we'll talk about lacing on these. And what I have found to be very comfortable for me on running these boots, and I mean, gosh, I have never been more satisfied. I've got a bunch of sets of Crispi boots for various seasons, but the lacing system is staggered, and so it actually doesn't run at just a 90 degree or 90 degree to kind of your foot there. I don't know what they call that. I'm sure Crispi has some type of name, but I run these laces relatively loose right here so that my foot can move and flex and I can actually grab the ground a little bit. And then what I like to do is I'll tension it up here a little bit like this, and I'll actually lock it right there with a half hitch. Then I'll grab these hooks. These hooks don't have a lot of give. Those are designed to lock that lace in right there, but I have found that to be very comfortable. And then I'll run my ankle fairly tight, and that allows my foot to move and grip and just kind of flex within the boot. And I don't seem to get hot spots because the boot can actually slide around on my foot just a little bit like that right there, but it still locks my ankle in. So my foot itself, as far as the footbed goes, even in the steepest terrain, I'm not getting any friction burn on the bottom of my feet, which drives me absolutely insane. If I get friction burn, you know, on the bottom of my foot, that's one of the most difficult things to overcome. So I leave them a little bit loose in the front. I can move them around like that, lock them in tight around my ankle so that my foot itself doesn't have the ability to move within the boot. So in conclusion, on the Altitude GTX, absolutely fantastic boot. If you're looking for something that's gonna get rid of perspiration inside the boot, go light, go fast. To me, it's really a go in light, come out heavy boot. The flex rating of a 2.5, if you're not familiar with the Crispi flex rating, the flex rating of a 2.5 seems to be a really nice happy medium of something that I can bivvy hunt with 35 or 40 pounds on my back and camp on my back if I need to. I can come out with 100 plus pounds if I need to, but it's still sneaky enough that I'll often leave my boots on if I'm stalking a bedded mule deer. I don't feel like I'm gonna break every single stick or crunch every piece of gravel that I step on. So I really like the boot. I can't recommend strongly enough. Get good socks, of course. Some type of super feet, whether it's this one, which I don't think we don't currently stock that one, but the safest super feet to get's the blue. That's the best seller. And keep up to date. You can get the Crispi cream. I mean, that's what's really designed for this leather in here. Get the Crispi cream and keep that leather soft so that you don't experience a lot of dramatic shrink and stretch on that. Keep that oiled up, protect your investment. But overall, absolutely fabulous boot. Couldn't be happier with it. I'll buy another set for my early season endeavors, absolutely time and time again. My next review, I have a couple of other sets of Crispi boots that are more of my mid to late season boots. So follow the Reds Hunting channel if you don't already, and then go over and check out Reds Fly Shop if you're into fly fishing. Go check out our other channel as well.